Rain hammered the hood of the unmarked sedan as it rolled to a stop under the orange wash of a streetlight. The driver, Detective Leon Barrow, didn't kill the engine. He didn't need to. The idling sound was a warning all by itself. On the sidewalk, Malik Grant stood with his hands visible and empty, a dark raincoat soaked through, hair cropped close, expression calm in a way that made Barrow angry on principle. Malik had called 911 because a woman in the apartment building behind him had been screaming for help. By the time the patrol cars arrived, the screaming had stopped. The only thing left was Malik, standing there like he owned the street. Barrow stepped out first. He was broad, late 40s, with a face that had learned how to smile without warmth. 2 uniforms followed. Officer Epps and Officer Darrow, hands resting casually near their holsters like the motion was muscle memory. Barrow's flashlight hit Malik's face hard. Hands up. Malik raised them higher. They already are. Barrow walked closer, boots splashing in shallow puddles. You, the one called in the disturbance? Yes. What's your name? Malik Grant. Barrow paused a beat too long on the name, as if tasting it. You got ID? Malik reached slowly for his wallet. Back pocket. Left. Stop. Barrow's voice cracked like a whip. You don't move until I tell you to move. Malik froze. The rain ran down his fingers in thin streams. Barrow looked over his shoulder at the uniforms like he wanted an audience. Funny how you people always want to control the situation. I'm just trying to give you my identification, Malik said evenly. Barrow stepped right into Malik's space. You trying to tell me how to do my job? The air tightened. Officer Epps shifted eager. Darrow watched Malik's hands like he was waiting for them to twitch. Malik's eyes flicked toward the building entrance behind them. The glass door was smeared with fingerprints, fogged by heat inside. Somewhere up there, a woman had screamed, then gone quiet. Malik swallowed the impulse to push past the men and run back inside. He knew how this went. The moment he turned his back, he'd be on the pavement. Barrow's flashlight beam slid down Malik's chest, catching on the subtle imprint beneath the raincoat, something rigid, rectangular. Barrow's gaze sharpened. What's under your coat? Malik didn't answer fast enough. Barrow's hand shot forward, grabbing Malik's lapel and yanking it open. A leather badge wallet flashed for a fraction of a second. Barrow snatched it, flipping it open like he was tearing open contraband. The words were clear even in the rain. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Barrow's mouth didn't move for a second. Then it curled. Well, would you look at that? Barrow said. We got ourselves a movie star. Malik kept his hands up. It's my credentials. Barrow held the badge wallet up, out of Malik's reach, then looked to Epps and Darrow. Y'all see this? This guy thinks he's FBI. It's not thinks, Malik said. I am. Barrow laughed, loud enough to carry. Sure you are. Malik's voice stayed level, but something steel-hard sat behind it. Detective, you can verify it. Call the number on the back. Call your watch commander. Call. Barrow snapped the badge wallet shut. You're not giving orders here. Malik's jaw flexed. I'm not giving orders. I'm telling you procedure. Procedure, Barrow repeated, mocking. Listen to him. He's got procedure, Officer Epps chuckled. Everybody's FBI now. Barrow looked Malik up and down again, slow. You got a gun under there too? Or you just like playing dress-up? Malik's eyes narrowed. I'm armed. I'm credentialed. I'm telling you now, do not touch my weapon. Barrow's smile widened. Oh, now he's threatening. It's not a threat, Malik said, voice lower. It's a warning for your safety and mine. Barrow's body language changed predatory, delighted. He stepped back and raised his voice. We got an armed suspect claiming federal status, hands still up. Malik's pulse kicked. He kept his arms steady, but he could feel the trap closing like a steel jaw. He heard more doors opening, neighbors peeking from behind curtains. A phone camera light flicked on across the street. Barrow pointed at Malik. Get on your knees. Malik held still. Detective, if you have reasonable suspicion, detain me properly. But stop escalating. On your knees, Barrow shouted. Malik lowered his voice. Careful. I'm not resisting, but you are making this dangerous. Barrow's face flushed. You don't get to tell me what's dangerous. Officer Darrow moved behind Malik. Epps stepped to Malik's side. Barrow kept the badge wallet in one hand like a trophy. Malik stared forward, breathing measured. The rain tasted like pennies. He could smell Barrow's cologne under the wet, sharpened sheep. Barrow nodded once, like he'd just decided something. Take him down. Hands hit Malik's shoulders. Hard. He started to go to his knees to comply, but Epps didn't wait. Epps yanked Malik's arms behind him, twisting until Malik's shoulder joints screamed. Malik's knees struck the sidewalk. A flash of pain shot up his spine. Stop, Malik said through clenched teeth. You're injuring me. Barrow leaned down close, speaking low so only Malik could hear. That badge don't mean nothing here. Malik's breath fogged in front of his face. He felt cold concrete under his palms. The rain made the sidewalk slick. His fingers slipped. Barrow straightened and shouted for the show. Search him. Malik's head snapped up. No. Officer Darrow tugged Malik's coat, reaching inside. Malik held his body rigid. Do not. Barrow stepped in, grabbing Malik's holster through the coat, deliberately rough. Oh, he's got it. Malik's voice turned sharp. Careful. Finger off the trigger. Barrow ripped the coat open and pulled the handgun free, holding it like it was contaminated. He didn't clear it safely. He didn't check the chamber with professional care. He waved it just slightly, enough that Malik could see the muzzle arc. Malik's throat tightened. Detective, you're handling that wrong. Barrow looked at the gun, then at Malik, eyes gleaming. You worried I might shoot you with your own gun? Malik's chest rose and fell. I'm worried you might shoot someone else. Barrow snorted. Hear that? He cares about us. Officer Epps shoved Malik's face toward the sidewalk. Malik's cheek hit wet concrete. Grit scratched his skin. Hands behind your back, Epps barked, like Malik hadn't been held there the whole time. A knee pressed between Malik's shoulder blades. Malik forced himself not to fight. Fighting was what they wanted. Fighting was the excuse. Barrow walked toward the patrol car, gun in hand, badge wallet in the other. He spoke loudly, performing for the growing crowd. We got a suspect impersonating a federal agent, armed, possibly connected to the domestic disturbance. I want a unit on the building, now. Malik's voice came out muffled against the ground. The disturbance is inside. A woman screamed, You're wasting time. Barrow looked back. You hear that? He wants to be the hero. Malik shut his eyes for half a second, then opened them again. The rain was cold against his lashes. He could taste blood where his lip had split when his face hit the pavement. Inside his coat, stitched into an inner pocket, was a small laminated card with a different seal, one that wasn't meant to be flashed to patrol cops in the rain. A task force credential, a name that would make people like Barrow suddenly remember their manners. Malik hadn't reached for it because he'd been trained not to pull surprises during an arrest. He'd been trained to survive. Officer Darrow snapped cuffs around Malik's wrists, too tight, ratcheting until the metal bit skin. Malik didn't flinch. His breathing stayed controlled, but his eyes were bright with something that wasn't fear. Barrow came back, crouched again, and held the FBI badge wallet near Malik's face. This is fake, Barrow said softly. And when we book you, you're going to learn what happens to people who lie. It's not fake, Malik said. Barrow stood, put him in the car. They hauled Malik up. His shoulder burned, and his wrists felt like they were being sliced with wire. He stumbled once, then caught himself, refusing to give them the satisfaction of falling. As they walked him toward the cruiser, Malik saw the woman who'd screamed. She stood on the building's second-floor landing, holding her arms around herself, face pale, eyes wide. A man stood behind her, half hidden in the doorway, posture casual. Too casual. The man met Malik's gaze for a heartbeat and smiled. Malik's stomach dropped. That smile wasn't relief. It was recognition. Malik tried to turn his head toward Barrow. The man behind her. Epps shoved Malik harder. Shut up. They pushed Malik into the backseat. The door slammed. The car smelled of vinyl and old sweat. The rain drummed on the roof like a countdown. Barrow stood outside the window, leaning close. His reflection warped in the wet glass. He raised Malik's badge wallet again, waving it in front of the crowd like evidence. Across the street, a teenage kid held up a phone recording. The blue glow of the screen was steady. Barrow noticed it and didn't care. He liked being seen. He tapped the glass twice with a knuckle. You got any last words, Agent Grant? Malik held Barrow's gaze through the window. Yes, he said quietly. You're making the biggest mistake of your career. Barrow laughed and walked away, rain soaking his shoulders as he climbed into the driver's seat. The engine revved. The cruiser rolled forward. Malik watched the apartment building recede, watched the woman vanish back inside, watched the smiling man's silhouette dissolve into shadow. He shifted his cuffed hands, feeling the cuffs bite deeper. He focused on one thing, keeping his voice steady for what came next. At the station, fluorescent lights turned everyone's skin the same sickly color. The front desk smelled like burned coffee. Malik was led through the lobby, past posters about community trust, past a flag in the corner that hung limp like it was tired. Barrow walked him like a prize. Officers looked up, eyes curious. Some smirked. Some looked away, like they'd seen this before and didn't want their conscience involved. In the booking area, Barrow slapped the badge wallet down on the counter. Found this on him. Fake creds. Gun. Claims he called in a domestic disturbance. The desk sergeant, an older woman with tired eyes, glanced at the badge wallet, then at Malik. You call it in? Yes, Malik said, and you need to send someone back. The woman is in danger. Barrow cut in. He's trying to redirect. Classic. The sergeant's eyes flicked to Malik's split lip, the wet streaks on his face that weren't all rain. Detective, why is he bleeding? Barrow's voice went flat. Resisted. Malik didn't move. I did not resist. The sergeant's jaw tightened. We'll sort it out. Get him photographed. Barrow leaned on the counter. I want him charged for impersonation. Possession of a firearm during Malik's voice cut through. Calm but harder now. I am FBI Special Agent Malik Grant. I am assigned to the Bureau's Public Corruption Unit. You can verify my credentials through the number on that badge wallet. Barrow laughed again. Public corruption. That's adorable. The sergeant hesitated, like a part of her recognized the danger in dismissing it outright. Detective, did you verify? Barrow's eyes flashed. Do I look like I need to verify? It's a black guy with a badge wallet in the rain. You know how many of those we get? The sergeant stared at him. The room went still in a way that made the hum of the lights suddenly loud. Malik met her gaze. Sergeant, please, call it in. Barrow pointed at Malik. He's manipulating you. The sergeant slowly picked up the badge wallet. She turned it over. Her thumb hovered over the embossed number. Barrow leaned in. Don't waste your time. The sergeant's eyes stayed on the number. If it's fake, we'll know fast. Barrow's mouth hardened. Fine, call your little number. She walked to the phone, dialed, waited. Her expression didn't change at first. Then it did, just slightly. A tightening at the corners of her eyes. A stiffness in her shoulders. She listened longer, nodding once, then twice. She glanced at Malik like she was seeing a different person standing in the same wet coat. Barrow watched, irritation rising. What? The sergeant covered the receiver and spoke low. They're transferring me. Barrow scoffed. To who? The sergeant's voice dropped further. To Washington. The room shifted. Officers who'd been half listening turned fully now. Barrow's laugh sounded smaller. They're messing with you. The sergeant didn't respond. She listened, her face drained of color. Yes, sir, she said into the phone. Yes, he's here. Yes, I understand. She hung up slowly, like the phone was heavier than it should be. She looked at Barrow. Detective, take your hands off him. Barrow blinked. What? Now. Barrow's jaw worked. Sergeant, he's... She stepped closer, voice sharp. Special Agent Grant is who he says he is, and they want him uncuffed immediately. For 1 second, Barrow stood frozen. Then anger flared. This is ridiculous. Malik's wrists throbbed. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat. He simply held Barrow's eyes, letting Barrow feel the weight of the room turning. Officer Epps hesitated, then reached for Malik's cuffs. Barrow slammed his palm on the counter. No, not until the sergeant snapped. Do it. Epps's fingers fumbled with the key. The metal clicked. Malik's hands came free. The skin around his wrists was raw, ridged with angry red lines. He flexed his fingers slowly, regaining feeling. His shoulder still burned. His cheek still carried grit. Barrow took a step toward Malik, voice low, furious. "You should have said something sooner." "I did," Malik said. Barrow's nostrils flared. "You could have avoided all this if I what?" Malik asked softly. "If I had the right face, the right tone, if I let you feel in control?" Barrow's eyes darted around. He could feel witnesses now. He could feel the consequences forming like storm clouds. The sergeant cleared her throat. "They're sending someone." Barrow snapped. "Who?" The sergeant swallowed. "An assistant special agent in charge, and an attorney from the U.S. Attorney's office." A few officers exchanged glances. Someone at the back muttered a curse under their breath. Barrow's voice turned brittle. "For what? For misunderstanding?" Malik's gaze drifted to a camera in the corner one of the station's security cameras. Its red light blinked steadily. "Not a misunderstanding," Malik said. "An unlawful arrest, an assault, mishandling of a firearm, and interference with a federal agent responding to a call for help." Barrow's face darkened. "You think you're going to come in here and ruin people over your ego?" Malik's voice stayed calm. "It isn't ego, it's accountability." Barrow stepped closer, too close, trying to reclaim the air. "You don't know what it's like out there. You don't know what we deal with." Malik didn't move back. "I know exactly what you deal with. That's why I'm here." Barrow's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Malik's answer was quiet. "It means you weren't the only one on duty tonight." The sergeant looked between them, uneasy. "Agent Grant, what's going on?" Malik's hand slid into his inner pocket. Not fast, not dramatic. He pulled out the second laminated credential, the one he hadn't shown on the sidewalk. He placed it on the counter, face up. "Join Federal Task for Public Integrität." Below it, in smaller print, was a designation that made the room go dead silent. "Undercover association. Coordinated with U.S. Attorney's Office." Barrow stared at it like it was a live wire. Malik's voice slowed, heavier now. "For 8 months, agents have been tracking reports of officers in this department abusing stops, planning contraband, and extorting citizens. 2 civil rights lawsuits are already pending. 3 internal complaints disappeared. Witnesses were threatened." Barrow's mouth opened, then closed. Malik continued. "Tonight, a call came in about a domestic disturbance at a building connected to one of your confidential informants. I responded because the Bureau believed an officer would try to contain the scene before it reached the right ears." Barrow's eyes flicked toward the sergeant, toward the officers watching. He could feel the word forming in their heads. Set up. Malik's gaze stayed on Barrow. "You took my badge. You searched me. You disarmed me unsafely. You ordered officers to use force. You did it in front of citizens, in front of cameras." Barrow's voice came out hoarse. "You planned this." Malik didn't blink. "You chose it." The front doors of the station opened. The sound carried a gust of wet air. Heavier footsteps, voices controlled and clipped. A man in a suit stepped into the lobby, coat still wet from the rain. Behind him were 2 more suits and a uniformed federal security officer. The suit's eyes were hard, direct. He didn't look at anyone else first. He looked at Malik. "Special Agent Grant," the suit said. Malik straightened. "Sir." The suit nodded once, then turned his gaze to the desk sergeant. "I'm Assistant Special Agent in Charge Daniel Klein. This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Naomi Reyes." The woman beside him held a folder against her chest like it was armor. Her eyes flicked to Malik's face, taking in the split lip, the abrasions, the red cuffs marks. Her expression didn't soften. It sharpened. Klein's gaze moved to Barrow. "Detective Leon Barrow?" Klein asked. Barrow's throat bobbed. "Yeah." Klein's voice was even. "Step away from the counter." Barrow bristled, forcing posture. "This is a local matter." Reyes opened the folder with a slow, deliberate motion. Paper edges crisp. "Not anymore." Barrow's eyes darted to the folder. "What is this?" Reyes's voice was clean, precise. "A federal preservation notice and a demand for immediate release of all body cam footage, dash cam footage, station surveillance, dispatch logs, and arrest reports related to Special Agent Malik Grant's detention." Barrow's face tightened. He wasn't detained. He was arrested. Reyes looked up. Then you just admitted to a felony. Silence hit like a slap. Barrow tried to recover. I had probable cause. Klein asked, probable cause for what? Barrow's eyes flashed. Impersonating. He had a badge. And, Klein cut in, he's FBI. Barrow's voice rose. I didn't know that. Malik spoke softly. I told you. Barrow turned on him, snapping. You said a lot of things. Reyes's eyes stayed on Barrow. Did you verify? Barrow hesitated, and the hesitation was an answer. Reyes flipped a page. Did you strike him? Did your officers force him to the ground? Did you apply handcuffs and tighten them beyond policy? Did you remove his weapon without proper clearing procedure? Barrow's jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped near his temple. He was armed. Reyes's tone cooled further. So are many lawful citizens and every sworn federal agent. That does not authorize assault. Klein turned slightly, addressing the desk sergeant and anyone listening. No one touches footage, no one deletes anything. Any attempt to tamper will be treated as obstruction. The room felt smaller. Even the officers who'd smirked earlier now stared at the floor. Reyes closed the folder halfway, like she was done with preliminaries. Detective Barrow, you were being placed on administrative leave, pending investigation by the FBI and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Barrow's shoulders jerked. Administrative leave? Over this? Klein's voice didn't change. Over this. And over what follows. Barrow's eyes widened slightly. What follows? Reyes's gaze slid to Malik, then back. Special Agent Grant's arrest report will be filed as evidence in a broader federal case. If you're involved, tonight just turned from embarrassing to catastrophic. Barrow's face reddened. He looked around, searching for allies. He found none willing to meet his eyes. Klein nodded toward the federal security officer. Take his weapon. Barrow's voice cracked. You can't. The federal officer stepped forward calmly, hand out. Detective, your firearm. Barrow hesitated, then slowly unholstered it, placing it into the federal officer's hand like he was surrendering a piece of himself. The humiliation was visible. It hung off him heavier than the rain. Malik watched without expression. His knuckles flexed once, then relaxed. Reyes spoke again, voice firm. Now. Agent Grant reported a domestic disturbance. Where is that located? Malik answered immediately. Oak Ridge Apartments, Unit 2B. A woman screamed. When patrol arrived, the screaming stopped. A male was behind her in the doorway. He appeared unbothered. Smiled at me. Reyes's eyes sharpened. Name? Malik's gaze focused. I don't have it, but the Bureau has interest in that address. Klein looked at the desk sergeant. Dispatch units. Now, and I want a supervisor on scene. Barrow tried to speak, desperate. This is blowing out of proportion. You're going to wreck the whole department because of one? Reyes cut him off. Because of one decision that exposed a pattern. Klein turned to Malik. His voice softened to fraction, not in comfort but in respect. You okay to return to the scene? Malik rolled his shoulders slightly, pain flickering across his face for a split second. Yes. Klein nodded. Let's go. They moved with purpose. Malik walked out of the station, flanked by federal presence. Rain hit his face again, colder now. But the air tasted different. Outside, two citizens still held up phones. One whispered to another, eyes wide, recognizing the suits, the urgency. A cruiser pulled out behind them, lights on. Another followed. This time, the response wasn't casual. At Oak Ridge Apartments, the scene had changed. The parking lot was bright with strobing red and blue. Officers moved in coordinated lines, weapons out but disciplined, voices controlled. Malik stepped out of the federal vehicle and pointed toward the second-floor landing. There. They moved up the stairs, boots loud on wet concrete. Malik's heart hammered as they reached the landing. The door to 2B was ajar. Inside, the air was warm and stale. A lamp threw weak light across a living room that looked staged too tidy. A purse sat on the couch. A mug sat on the table. The details screamed normality, the way a counterfeit bill tries too hard to look real. A woman sat in a chair near the kitchen, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes were swollen. Her posture was rigid, like her body had learned to freeze. A man stood near the hallway, leaning against a wall, arms crossed. He wore a hoodie and jeans. Calm face. Same smile. He looked at Malik and his smile faltered, just slightly, when he saw the suits behind him. Klein spoke first. "Sir, step away from the hallway." The man's hands lifted slowly. "What's going on?" "I didn't do anything." The woman's eyes flicked toward him, then down again. Reyes stepped forward. "Ma'am, are you safe?" The woman didn't answer. Her throat moved like she wanted to. The man laughed softly. "She's fine. This is ridiculous." Malik watched the man's eyes. They were calculating, always checking, always measuring exits. Klein nodded to an officer. "Separate them." The officer guided the woman gently toward the living room. Another officer stepped toward the man, hands ready. The man's smile returned, forced. "You got a warrant?" Reyes's voice was razor clean. "We have exigent circumstances. A 911 call reporting screams, a witness present, and now your obstructive behavior." The man's eyes narrowed. "Witness? Who?" Malik stepped into his sightline. "Me." For a second, anger flashed in the man's face, then it smoothed. "You again." Malik's voice was low. "What's your name?" The man shrugged. "Troy." Malik didn't react. "Last name." "Troy," the man repeated, sharper. Klein's eyes hardened. "We'll identify you." The man's gaze flicked toward the hallway, then back. His body shifted as if he were deciding whether to run. Malik moved subtly in angle change, a position that blocked the hallway. Not aggressive, just present. The man noticed. His smile died. Then, from the hallway, a sound. A creak. A soft thud. A muffled whimper. Every head turned. The woman's body jolted. Tears spilled immediately. "No," she whispered. Reyes's voice sharpened. "Who else is here?" The man's lips parted, then he shut them. Klein didn't ask again. Clear the hallway. Officers moved fast. One pushed the door to the back room open. The smell hit first stale sweat, fear, something metallic. A child's voice whimpered, barely audible. "Here," an officer called, voice tightening. Malik stepped to the doorway and saw it. A little boy, maybe 6, curled on a mattress on the floor, wrists bound with zip ties. His cheeks streaked with dried tears. His eyes wide and glassy with terror. Malik felt something cold and furious settle in his gut. The boy flinched when Malik appeared, as if expecting another strike. Malik's voice softened. Careful. "Hey, it's okay. You're not in trouble." The boy didn't move. His gaze darted toward the living room, toward the man. The man's calm cracked. "That's not," Klein's voice roared. "On the ground. Now." The man's hands lifted, then dropped to his sides, defiant. "You can't." A federal officer grabbed him, twisting him down with controlled force. The man fought just enough to claim later that he'd been mishandled. But his resistance was recorded by body cams. Clear, ugly, futile. Reyes moved toward the child. Her hands were steady as she knelt, cutting the zip ties. "You're safe," she whispered, voice firm. The boy's hands trembled as circulation returned. The woman in the living room made a sound like her lungs had finally found air. She collapsed forward, sobbing into her own hands. The man tray was hauled up, cuffed. He spit toward Malik. It missed and hit the wall. Malik's eyes didn't leave him. "That smile," Malik said quietly. "You smiled because you thought I was powerless." Troy's face twisted. "You are." Klein stepped in, voice cold. "Not anymore." They walked Troy out. In the parking lot, neighbors had gathered despite the rain, pulled by the lights, by the gravity of something terrible being uncovered. Phones recorded. Murmurs swelled. A woman in a robe covered her mouth, horrified. A man shook his head, furious. When Troy was pushed into a cruiser, he leaned forward, shouting through the rain, "This is a setup." No one believed him, not now. Not with the child being carried out wrapped in a blanket by an EMT, face pressed into her shoulder, small fingers clutching fabric like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Malik watched the child leave, jaw tight. He could still feel the sidewalk grit on his cheek. Still feel the cuffs biting. The pain in his shoulder pulsed like a reminder. Reyes approached Malik. "That boy. she said quietly, is connected to your corruption case? Malik's eyes stayed on the departing ambulance. Indirectly, this building is tied to an informant used by Barrow's unit. Reyes's gaze sharpened further. So Barrow's unit had reason to keep this quiet. Malik nodded once, and Barrow chose to arrest me instead of checking the apartment. Klein's face was stone. That's not just incompetence, that's cover. The next hours moved like machinery finally switched on. Federal teams arrived. Evidence technicians photographed every room. Phones were seized. A laptop was bagged. A hidden compartment in a closet was found, cash bundles vacuum sealed, a second handgun, a small notebook with names and numbers. The woman her name was Liana sat with Reyes in a quiet corner, wrapped in a blanket, shaking. Her voice came in broken fragments at first, then steadier as Reyes listened without interruption. He said the cops wouldn't help, Liana whispered. He said he knew people. Reyes's voice was steady. Did he say who? Liana swallowed. He said, Detective Barrow. He said Barrow made problems go away. Malik stood a few feet away, listening, face unreadable. Inside, the fury had sharpened into focus. Klein walked up beside Malik, voice low. You hear that? Malik nodded. Yes. Klein's gaze stayed on the apartment doorway where evidence bags moved in and out. This just turned your mistreatment into leverage. The worst kind. The kind that ends careers and starts prison sentences. Malik's eyes were dark. Good. Back at the station, the mood had turned from smug to sick. Word traveled fast when federal suits were seen walking through a local department like they owned the walls. Barrow sat in an interview room now, not behind a desk, but at a metal table under a camera. His badge lay in a plastic evidence bag on the table in front of him. His gun was gone. His confidence was fraying at the edges. Across from him sat Naomi Reyes and an FBI internal investigator. Klein stood behind them, arms folded. Barrow tried to talk his way out first. This is political. You're making an example. Reyes didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Detective, you detained a federal agent and ignored a domestic disturbance that resulted in a child being found bound in the same residence. The woman in the apartment stated you were named as protection. Barrow's face went pale. She's lying. She's trying to save her own ass. Reyes slid a paper across the table. We have a preliminary warrant for your phone records and financials. We also have an emergency order to preserve all department communications. If you've been involved in payments, extortion, or evidence planting, we will find it. Barrow's eyes flicked to the paper like it was poison. You don't have anything. Klein spoke quietly. We have more than you think. Barrow's voice rose. This is because of that agent. Because he got offended. Reyes's stare didn't waver. This is because you acted like you were untouchable. Barrow leaned forward, desperate anger now. He came into my city with a chip on his shoulder. Reyes's voice hardened. You put him on his knees in the rain and treated his credentials like a joke. You mishandled his firearm. You had him cuffed so tight he's bruised. You did it in front of cameras. Barrow's nostrils flared. So what? People get roughed up. The investigator's pen stopped moving. The air in the room changed like the words themselves had become evidence. Reyes didn't react outwardly. Repeat that. Barrow realized too late what he'd said. His mouth closed, but it was already recorded. Klein exhaled slowly through his nose. That's enough. The next day, the department woke up to a nightmare that didn't care about excuses. The video from the teenager's phone hit the internet before breakfast. Rain. Flashlights. Barrow holding Malik's badge wallet up like a joke. Malik on his knees. The gun being waved. Barrow's laughter. The station's own surveillance footage leaked hours later. Malik uncuffed only after Washington got involved. Barrow's face twisting as control slipped away. City officials scrambled. The mayor's office issued a statement that sounded like panic, dressed in careful words. The police chief held a press conference with sweat on his upper lip, promising transparency while avoiding direct mention of Barrow's name until a reporter forced it out of him. Then the civil attorney announcements came. A class action suit had been filed by multiple prior complainants. Malik's unlawful arrest captured on video became the anchor point. The number attached to the demand was brutal. $10 million. The figure spread like fire. Headlines screamed it. Talk radio fed on it. Community meetings turned into shouting matches. Taxpayers demanded resignations. Activists demanded arrests. Inside the department, officers who'd stayed quiet for years felt something shift. The wall of silence wasn't built for federal subpoenas. 2 days later, Internal Affairs opened every file that had ever touched Barrow's unit. Complaints marked unfounded were reopened. Dashcam gaps were questioned. Evidence logs were audited. Within a week, 2 officers resigned. Not to be noble, to run. Within 2 weeks, 1 officer walked into a federal building with a lawyer in a trembling hand and agreed to cooperate. He brought names, dates, cash drop locations, a storage unit key. The dominoes began to fall. Malik sat with Klein in a quiet conference room, watching a wall monitor filled with spreadsheets of financial transfers, phone pings, and case numbers. Malik's face was calm, but his eyes looked older. Klein spoke softly. "You understand what you triggered." Malik didn't look away from the screen. "I understand what they triggered." Klein nodded, acknowledging the difference. "The city's going to call this a scandal. The department's going to call it a misunderstanding. They'll say one bad detective." Malik's jaw tightened. It was never one. Klein slid a file toward him. "Warrants are signed. We're going in tomorrow. Multiple locations. Multiple arrests." Malik opened the file. Photos stared back. Barrow shaking hands with men outside a bar. Barrow near a car trunk. Barrow standing in a hallway at Oak Ridge. Malik's stomach tightened again at the memory of the child. Klein's voice lowered. "Barrow's lawyer is pushing a narrative that you antagonized him, that you wanted to be arrested for publicity." Malik's eyes lifted slowly. "Let him." Klein studied him. "You sure?" Malik's voice was quiet. "The footage is the truth." The morning of the raids came with a gray sky and a city holding its breath. Federal vehicles rolled through streets before dawn. Doors were knocked, then kicked when no one answered. Officers who'd once strutted in uniform found themselves staring down federal badges and court orders. Barrow was taken from his house in front of his wife, who screamed his name into the cold air. His neighbors watched from windows, faces pale, realizing the stories they'd half believed were real. At the station, the police chief stood in his office as agents served him with documents he couldn't argue with. His hands shook as he signed acknowledgments that he would preserve evidence or face obstruction charges. In the squad room, officers stared at the empty desks where colleagues used to sit. Some looked angry. Some looked afraid. Some looked ashamed. That afternoon, the U.S. Attorney's Office held a press conference. Cameras lined up like a jury. Naomi Reyes stood behind a podium, posture rigid, face unreadable. She didn't dramatize. She didn't need to. She announced the charges: civil rights violations under color of law, conspiracy, obstruction, extortion, and unlawful detention of a federal agent. She confirmed an ongoing investigation into systemic abuses. She confirmed federal oversight measures. When a reporter asked about the $10 million lawsuit, Reyes didn't blink. "That will be addressed through the courts." Barrow watched the press conference from a holding cell. Jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. The television glow painted his face in harsh light. For the first time, he looked small. He wasn't in control of the narrative anymore. Weeks later, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and old paper. The benches were full. Some in uniform, some in suits. Many from the community, people who had been stopped, searched, humiliated, threatened, and told they had no voice. Malik sat in the front row, suit pressed, shoulders still healing. The split lip was gone, but the memory wasn't. He sat with his hands folded, composed, eyes fixed forward. Barrow was brought in wearing a jail uniform. His wrists were cuffed in front of him. His posture was stiff, trying to project authority into a room where none belonged to him now. He glanced at Malik. Malik didn't look away. Not a flicker, not a threat, just presence. The judge entered. The room rose and sat. The judge's voice was steady, bored by theatrics. The prosecutor laid out facts like bricks. Video evidence, witness statements, the sergeant's verification call, the mishandling of Malik's weapon, the domestic call ignored, the child found bound, the woman's statement naming Barrow, financial records showing deposits that didn't match salary, phone records placing Barrow near locations he claimed he'd never been. Barrow's lawyer tried to argue context, stress, miscommunication, a chaotic night, a belief that Malik's badge was fake, a claim that Barrow had been trying to protect the public. The judge listened without expression. Then Malik was called. He walked to the stand with measured steps. He took the oath. He sat. His hands rested calmly on the table. The prosecutor asked him to describe the night. Malik's voice was controlled, not emotional, not performative. He described the rain, the scream, the arrival of patrol units, Barrow's tone, the demand to kneel, the force, the gun mishandling. He described trying to warn them about procedure. He described Barrow laughing at his credentials. He described being pushed face first onto the sidewalk. When he spoke about seeing the woman on the landing and the man smiling behind her, the courtroom grew quieter. People leaned forward, hungry for the point where negligence became something worse. The prosecutor asked, "Did you resist?" "No," Malik said. The defense tried to shake him. They asked about his tone, whether he sounded authoritative, whether he provoked, whether he understood how stressful policing is. Malik's gaze remained steady. Stress does not authorize abuse. The judge didn't react outwardly, but the words landed. The community and the benches didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Their stillness was heavier than applause. When Malik stepped down, he passed Barrow's table. Barrow's eyes followed him, desperate to find something: fear, arrogance, triumph. Malik gave him nothing. The sentencing came after a plea deal collapsed under the weight of evidence and cooperation from Barrow's former associates. The courtroom was packed again, but the air felt different. Less suspense, more inevitability. The judge looked down at Barrow, voice level. "You were entrusted with authority. You used it as a weapon. You treated a citizen, and then a federal agent, as an object to control rather than a person with rights." Barrow stared ahead, jaw rigid. The judge continued, "Your actions did not occur in a vacuum. They contributed to harm beyond this case. A child was found bound in a residence tied to your conduct. A victim stated you were used as a shield. The court finds your behavior aggravated by abusive position, lack of remorse, and the systemic impact." Barrow's lawyer whispered to him. Barrows didn't respond. The judge's gavel didn't slam. It didn't need to. The sentence was spoken clearly, like a door closing. Prison time, loss of pension, permanent decertification, no return. A murmur moved through the benches. Some relief, some anger that it had taken so long. Outside, when Barrow was led down the courthouse steps in handcuffs, cameras caught every angle. The same kind of public exposure he'd once enjoyed when he paraded people through the station now turned on him. Flashbulbs popped. Questions shouted. Barrow's face twisted as he was placed into a transport van. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked like a man realizing the world had rules he couldn't bully. In the weeks that followed, the department changed in ways it couldn't fake. Federal monitors were installed. Policies were rewritten with teeth. Body cam compliance audits became mandatory. Complaint procedures were moved outside the chain of command that had buried them. Some officers resented it. Some welcomed it. But the old comfort of impunity had been broken. At a community center, Malik stood quietly at the back as Liana spoke to a circle of women and advocates. Her voice trembled, but she kept talking. The boy sat nearby with a social worker, coloring in a book with careful concentration. When the meeting ended, Liana approached Malik. She didn't smile. Her eyes were tired, but there was something steadier in them now. "I didn't think anyone would listen," she said. Malik's voice was soft. "You were heard." She swallowed, fighting tears. "They always said the cops wouldn't help. They said it like it was a law." Malik looked at the boy, then back to her. "It wasn't a law. It was a lie people enforced." Liana nodded slowly. "Thank you." Malik didn't answer with a speech. He simply nodded back, a small acknowledgement that didn't pretend words could erase what had happened. Later, Malik drove past the precinct on a quiet night. The building looked the same from the outside: brick, glass, flags. But the air around it felt altered, like the ground had shifted slightly and no one could pretend it hadn't. He stopped at a red light and watched an officer on the corner speak to a man calmly, hands visible, voice low. No shoving, no theater, just procedure, just restraint. The light turned green. Malik drove on. The city would keep moving. New officers would be hired. New cases would come. But the damage Barrow caused and the accountability that followed had left a scar the department couldn't cover with slogans. In the end, the rain from that first night washed away nothing. It only revealed what was already there. How quickly power turns cruel when it expects no consequence. And how fast it collapses when the truth finally has witnesses.